It's strange how life changes when success finally comes your way. My name's Kyle, and I never thought I'd be where I am now. Financially secure, with a business that keeps growing. But as they say, money reveals people's true colors. And in my case, it uncovered the shocking reality of who I'd spent years building a life with. I met my wife, Megan, when I was broke and barely getting by. We were young and struggling, sharing late-night ramen and dreams of making it together. She was supportive, encouraging me to chase my ambitions. I thought we were a team. We both did our share to get through those hard times, and I'll admit, having her by my side gave me the motivation I needed to push through some of my darkest days. Then, it all started to pay off. My business grew quickly, faster than I'd anticipated, and before long, we were living the life we dreamed of. Bigger house, nicer cars, vacations we'd never imagined we could afford. But the more successful I became, the more Megan seemed to change. What was once a partnership started feeling more like something else. She spent her days at high-end boutiques, having girls' nights that seemed to go later and later, and filling the house with things we never used. The worst part? Megan started looking at me differently, like I was just part of the furniture in her new lifestyle. And one night, when I came home early from a business trip, I discovered the first sign that things had gone horribly wrong. As I'd soon learn, that was only the beginning. That night, I came home earlier than planned, exhausted but excited to surprise Megan. As I walked through the door, I noticed something odd. She wasn't expecting me, and she looked startled, almost guilty, when she saw me. She quickly brushed it off, saying she didn't hear me come in and was just catching up on girls' group chats. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, but I couldn't help noticing her phone, screen down, clutched tightly in her hand. Over the next few weeks, the changes became more obvious. She'd be out for hours, claiming she was at yoga or lunching with friends. She'd always been sociable, but this was different. Megan was coming home with new clothes, expensive jewelry, things I hadn't even known she wanted. And every time I asked about it, she'd laugh, say I should just let her enjoy herself, or claim it was all a reward for the hard times we'd been through. I wanted to believe her, but the carefree Megan I used to know was nowhere to be seen. Instead, I found myself married to someone who spent more time on her appearance, her social life, and her freedom than on us. One evening, after yet another late lunch that stretched well into the night, I decided to confront her. I asked her why she'd been so distant, why everything felt different. She dismissed it immediately, saying I was paranoid, that maybe I was just too busy with work to understand that she was trying to live a little. That was the first time I questioned if Megan was still the woman I fell in love with, or if she'd ever been. Little did I know, I was about to find out how far things had gone. A few weeks after that unsettling conversation, I decided to trust my instincts and look closer at what Megan had been up to. Her behavior was too strange, too disconnected from the woman I thought I knew. One afternoon, while she was out on another one of her mysterious lunches, I took a closer look at our bank statements. I expected to find maybe a few high-end purchases, a handbag here, some spa days there. But what I saw was way beyond that. Multiple charges from upscale restaurants, hotels, and luxury stores I'd never heard of. Some of these expenses were in places Megan hadn't even mentioned visiting. It didn't add up. My stomach twisted as I noticed regular payments to a single account I didn't recognize. It seemed like she was sending money to someone else. That's when the reality hit me. I knew something was off, and I had to get to the bottom of it. After a quick call to a friend who worked in cybersecurity, I managed to pull some phone records. And there it was, hours and hours of late-night calls to a number I didn't recognize. When I called it, a man's voice answered, sounding just as startled as I felt. Before I could even process what I was doing, I demanded to know who he was and why he was talking to my wife. His voice went silent, then he laughed, an obnoxious, smug laugh. "Oh, Megan didn't tell you? Figures. She's always liked keeping her little secrets." The ground seemed to slip from under me. I wanted to confront her right then, to demand answers. But instead, I hung up and tried to regain my composure. Megan was hiding something big from me, something she'd obviously been getting away with for months. But if she wanted to play this game, I was ready to make my move too. That night, I waited for Megan to come home. She was late, as usual, and when she finally walked through the door, she barely even looked at me. She tossed her designer bag on the table, sighed, and gave me a tired, "Hey," before starting up the stairs. "Megan, we need to talk," I said, my voice sharp and cold. She paused, giving me an annoyed glance. "What's this about, Kyle? I'm exhausted." I gestured for her to sit down, and she rolled her eyes but complied, looking more inconvenienced than anything else. "I know what you've been up to," I said bluntly, my patience hanging by a thread. She laughed, an incredulous, mocking laugh that seemed to echo in the quiet room. "Oh, please. Are you seriously accusing me of something right now? This sounds like one of those ridiculous soap operas you hate so much." I didn't flinch. I took out the stack of bank statements I'd printed, highlighting every suspicious charge, and placed them on the table in front of her. She looked down, her face shifting from defiance to something else. Maybe fear, maybe irritation. "Who is he, Megan?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper but full of cold anger. "Who is the guy you've been spending our money on?" Her eyes met mine, hard and unflinching. "Fine. Since you're so determined to ruin a perfectly good night, I'll say it. Yes, there's someone else. And he actually gives me the life I want. Not just this dull existence where you're married to your work." I felt my blood turn to ice. This dull existence is what put this roof over our heads, paid for every designer bag and overpriced meal you've been splurging on. "Maybe I don't want your version of success, Kyle," she snapped back. "Maybe I'm tired of being second to your business. I found someone who actually treats me like I matter." My heart pounded as I absorbed her words. She'd given up on everything we'd built on me, without a second thought. And in that moment, I knew there was no fixing this. But I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I was done being her fool. Megan's cold confession hung in the air, but instead of yelling or breaking down, I felt a strange calm wash over me. She thought she'd gotten away with it, that she'd somehow won by admitting her betrayal with such shameless audacity. But if she wanted to play dirty, I was more than prepared to give her a taste of her own medicine. The next morning, while she was out again, likely meeting her mystery man, I set my plan in motion. I made some calls to secure my assets, moving anything significant out of our shared accounts and into private ones. Megan had been draining our money without a care, but that gravy train was about to run dry. Then, I hired a private investigator. If she thought her little affair was going to cost me everything I'd worked for, she was dead wrong. I wanted every detail about her and her new friend. It didn't take long for the investigator to bring back the information I needed. Turns out, the guy she'd been seeing, someone named Travis, was a notorious player in the city. Known for leeching off wealthy women, he was practically a professional con man. As soon as I had that evidence in hand, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to make sure Megan's new life with Travis would come crashing down just as she thought it was getting started. But I kept quiet, waiting for the right moment to spring my trap. That weekend, Megan had the audacity to invite her friends over, throwing some ridiculous celebration in our house. She pranced around, laughing and clinking glasses with them, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. Little did she know, I was about to take that entire world away from her, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. I waited until her little celebration was in full swing, with Megan parading around like she owned the place. She had no idea that her entire fantasy was about to unravel in front of everyone she knew. With the evidence I'd gathered, I called up one of her closest friends, a mutual friend who'd always been on my side and never really liked how Megan had been behaving lately. This friend, Lisa, agreed to help me expose the truth. She arrived at the party, all smiles, blending in effortlessly. And while Megan was distracted by her friends and the flowing champagne, Lisa subtly planted copies of the private investigator's photos and reports throughout the house. One in the bathroom, one near the wine bar, and a few on the kitchen counter. Each one showed Megan and Travis in various stages of her betrayal. Pictures of them together, hotel receipts, everything. At first, nobody noticed, but soon enough, Megan's friends started finding the photos and passing them around, whispering in shocked voices, trying to make sense of it all. Megan, completely oblivious, continued laughing with her drink in hand until one of her friends pulled her aside and showed her the photos. The color drained from her face as she took in the evidence of her lies and betrayal, now laid bare for all to see. She stammered, trying to explain, to save face, but it was too late. Her carefully crafted image crumbled in front of her closest friends. It was only a matter of time before everyone knew the truth about who she really was. And then, just as the whispers grew into murmurs, I stepped forward, making sure every eye was on me. It's amazing what money and success can bring out in people, isn't it, Megan? I said, my voice calm but loud enough for the room to hear. Congratulations on your new life. Hope it's worth everything you threw away. She looked at me, her eyes filled with fury and panic. But there was nothing she could say to undo the damage. I turned and walked out, leaving her to face the wreckage on her own. It was her mess now, and I wasn't about to stick around to clean it up. The fallout was even more satisfying than I'd imagined. Word of Megan's betrayal spread quickly among her friends, and in a small, tightly knit social circle like ours, there was no escaping the whispers. Within days, she was the talk of the town, her reputation in shambles. Friends she'd once flaunted in front of barely wanted to be seen with her, and her lavish lifestyle suddenly felt hollow without the adoration and support of those around her. Meanwhile, I was moving on, feeling lighter with every passing day. I'd taken all the necessary steps to secure my assets, and my lawyer ensured that she'd get only what was fair, which, thanks to the evidence I'd gathered, wasn't much. Megan quickly realized that her free ride was over. Her reckless spending, which had once been propped up by my hard-earned money, was now a luxury she could no longer afford. But the real twist came a few weeks later when I received a call from none other than Travis. Apparently, he'd gotten wind that Megan was no longer the wealthy woman he thought she was. In a desperate attempt to protect his interests, he tried to negotiate with me, claiming he'd been misled by her and didn't want any hard feelings. He even had the audacity to suggest that he could help her get back on her feet if I showed a bit of generosity. I laughed in his face, savoring every second. Good luck with that, I told him. You're welcome to take her, but there's nothing left to take from me. Hearing the panic in his voice was the cherry on top. I hung up, knowing full well that Travis would ditch her the moment he realized there was no more money to leech. They deserved each other, and now they could experience life without the safety net I'd provided. As for Megan, she sent a few half-hearted messages, trying to apologize, to explain herself, but I left every one of them unread. There was no going back for me. She'd made her choice, and now she'd have to live with the consequences. With Megan and her drama finally behind me, I focused on rebuilding my life in a way that truly felt meaningful. I poured myself into my business, making new investments and partnerships that fueled both my professional and personal growth. For the first time in years, I could dedicate my energy to what truly mattered, unburdened by the weight of betrayal and manipulation. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my climb to success. They welcomed me back without hesitation, reminding me of what genuine relationships looked like. It felt good to be around people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Over time, I even began to date again, though cautiously. I wasn't in a hurry to jump into anything serious, but I was ready to experience something real. I found myself drawn to people who were grounded, people who didn't need glitz and glamour to be happy. Megan had taught me a harsh lesson, but one I was grateful for now. True connections are built on mutual respect and sincerity, not on superficial status or material gain. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I saw a photo of Megan. She looked worn out, sitting alone in a modest apartment, a far cry from the life she'd once flaunted. It struck me as sad but fitting. She had sacrificed everything for a temporary thrill, and now it had come full circle. Travis was long gone, of course. I'd heard he'd moved on to his next investment without a second thought, but I felt no bitterness, only a sense of peace. I realized that I had not only survived her betrayal but come out stronger and wiser because of it. In the end, I had gained far more than I'd lost. Looking back on everything, I realized that what happened with Megan was both a painful loss and a profound awakening. It taught me a truth I wish I'd known earlier. Success isn't about money or status. It's about finding people who value you for who you are, not just what you can give them. In some twisted way, her betrayal was a gift, a wake-up call that made me reevaluate my life and my choices. The time and energy I'd wasted trying to satisfy someone who could never be content now fuel my journey forward. I've learned to set boundaries, to trust my instincts, and to recognize the difference between genuine support and opportunism. It's been a long road, but I can honestly say I'm happier and more fulfilled than ever before. And if I could give one piece of advice to anyone going through something similar, it would be this. Never compromise your worth for someone who doesn't see it. Life is too short to spend it with people who don't truly value you. Seek out those who lift you up, who are by your side in the struggles as much as the successes. Because in the end, those are the relationships that make life rich. Megan's gone, but I'm still here, stronger, smarter, and finally free. And I wouldn't trade that peace of mind for anything.